In civil litigation, substantive brilliance cannot save a mathematically flawed timeline. Miss a procedural deadline by a single day, and the court's gavel falls to dismiss the action entirely. Jurisdiction, the court's very power to hear a case, is strictly bound by time. Before a judge ever evaluates the merits of a defense, they verify the exact date the pleading was filed. Rule 22 of the Revised Rules of Civil Procedure provides the mechanical logic governing these stakes, dictating exactly how the Philippine judicial system counts days. A legal team can spend thousands of hours constructing an airtight defense against a multi-million peso claim. If they calculate their filing window as 30 days, but the rules yield 29, the pleading is rejected. The defense is discarded. The case is lost. Today, we are conducting a forensic audit of these timeline algorithms. We will map exactly how the days are counted and identify the precise mathematical errors that lead to dismissal. We will isolate two specific mechanisms: the baseline computation established in Section 1 and the timeline interruption protocol defined in Section 2. Mastering this algorithmic math is a prerequisite for practice. Without perfect computation, a lawyer surrenders their client's rights without a fight. This digital calendar illustrates the foundational logic of Rule 22, Section 1. The law requires full 24-hour cycles to satisfy a deadline. To guarantee this, Section 1 renders the day of the triggering event mathematically invisible. It does not count. This creates the primary mnemonic anchor for computation, EFIL. Exclude first, include last. Consider a defendant served with a summons on July 1st. They have a strict 30-day period to file an answer. Applying the axiom, July 1st acts exclusively as day 0. The actual counting begins at midnight, making July 2nd day 1. Counting forward exactly 30 full days lands the deadline on July 31st. This rule applies even to hours. Take a habeas corpus case where a director of prisons receives a court decision on October 1st at 10 a.m., triggering a 48-hour window to appeal. A simple addition of 48 hours to the receipt time would place the deadline at 10 a.m. on October 3rd. That calculation is incorrect. By strictly excluding the day of the event, October 1st, the 48-hour clock does not begin ticking until 12:01 a.m. on October 2nd. Legal time relies on strict 24-hour mathematical calendar days rather than literal hours elapsed. Voiding day 0 establishes the non-negotiable jurisdictional anchor. This basic calendar algorithm encounters a syntax error when the mathematically exact final day lands on a weekend or a holiday. Section 1 provides a specific patch. If the deadline is a Saturday, Sunday, or legal holiday in the court's location, the clock stops running. The deadline automatically shifts forward to the next working day. Many practitioners miscalculate by treating the day of receipt as day 1. Doing so shifts the entire timeline forward, resulting in a late filing. Another error involves intermediate non-working days. Rule 22 ignores weekends occurring inside the counting period. The highlight moves straight through Saturday and Sunday without adding extra time. The extension only triggers if the final designated day itself lands on the non-working day. Supreme Court administrative circulars that alter office hours or announce half-days do not override Rule 22's hard calendar math. The designated deadline day remains the same. External factors like weekends or holidays bend the timeline solely at the very end of the cycle. They never alter the continuous consumption of the internal days. The computation changes with Rule 22, Section 2, which dictates the mechanics of procedural interruptions. An algorithmic pause occurs when a party files a valid motion that legally stops the clock, severing the timeline into two pieces. This initiates a banking mechanic. The specific day the interrupting act is filed is mathematically excluded from the consumed time counter. It remains part of the available balance. The clock resumes on a precise date, the day after the party receives notice that the cause of the interruption has ceased, usually through a court order denying the motion. We test this with a standard 15-day period to file an answer. On day 8, the party files a motion for bill of particulars. Because the day of filing is excluded from consumption, exactly 7 days have been spent. Subtracting those 7 days from the initial 15 leaves exactly 8 days in the bank. The moment the party receives notice that their motion is denied, that 8-day clock resumes ticking on the very next day. This banking mechanic defines the window for filing an answer following a motion to dismiss. If a defendant files a motion to dismiss and it's denied, the question is whether they receive a fresh 15 days to file an answer. The answer is negative. A motion to dismiss targets an interlocutory phase. It does not end the case. Therefore, Section 2 remainder math applies strictly. An interlocutory interruption merely pauses the existing timeline. Practitioners must track their exact remainder balance to avoid an immediate default the moment the clock restarts. Section 2 is modified by the NAPES doctrine, the fresh period rule. This override has a narrow trigger. It activates exclusively for a motion for reconsideration or new trial directed at a final judgment. When triggered, the mechanical result is a uniform, pristine 15-day period granted solely to file a notice of appeal. This fresh count starts exactly from the date the party receives the order denying their motion. Applying a fresh 15-day period to the left side of the matrix represents a common error in appellate practice. Assuming a denied motion to dismiss grants a fresh 15 days to answer incorrectly applies the doctrine to a non-final order. It receives only the remainder math. The boundary is absolute. NAPES is exclusively an appeals mechanism. It is never a general timeline reset. The doctrine exists to regiment appeal periods uniformly. Practitioners must categorize court orders as interlocutory or final to know exactly which algorithmic rule applies to the deadline. Ultimately, Rule 22 provides the rigid mathematical syntax that strictly governs the timeline of every single civil action in the Philippines. Under Section 1, you exclude the first day, include the last, and only shift weekends at the finish line. Under Section 2, you bank the day of interruption and calculate the exact remainder. And you apply the NAPES fresh period solely and exclusively to final judgments. Miscalculate these steps by 24 hours, and substantive arguments will never be heard. Professional competence depends on executing this timeline architecture so that the court's jurisdiction remains intact.